Okay. I know he had a pretty low yards per carry last year, and he was, he's raw, he's young, he's unproven. It's not fair for me to just say, no, don't take a chance on a guy like Taylor. The Cardinals are in a big mess, and the big mess is that they have an aging, injury-prone starting quarterback in Carson Palmer, who came out of obscurity about 2 or 3 years ago, basically came out of retirement. Everyone had forgotten about him. He comes back and shows he's still got an arm. And then he's surrounded by 2 elite receivers, or at least near elite receivers. Larry Fitzgerald, slightly on the downside of his career, and Michael Floyd, on the way upside of his career. He's got top 5 receiver potential over the next several years if he has a good quarterback. Now they have Drew Stanton, and Drew Stanton's probably going to be the quarterback this week. He could be the quarterback for several weeks. They don't know how bad the damage is with Palmer. So do you want to have a backup running back on a team that might have a lot of trouble throwing the ball, a lot of trouble scoring? And if you have a backup running back on a team that doesn't score a lot of points, your TD potential drops significantly. If you have that in New Orleans or you have it in Green Bay, I'd rather have a James Starks than a Stephen Taylor. I'd rather have a Damian Williams in Miami even than, that it was now the backup behind Lamar Miller than I would Stephen Taylor. I think Taylor is one of those guys who might get 6 carries, for 24 yards, and that's it. And I think that's a wasted opportunity.
All right, here's another one for guys like me looking for running backs, perhaps out of nowhere. Silas Redd, do you think, is Helu going to be out more? Do you know how his prognostication here is looking to where does Redd become a viable option? Because if so, he would be the number 2, and he definitely got some carries and some red zone work the other day. So do you think he becomes an option?
I would stay away from him. And I've been wrong about the Redskins. It was 2 years ago in the preseason. I thought Evan Royster was going to be there. Their starting running back, I thought it was shaping up that way. And then their, 5th-round pick, Alfred Morris steps up and becomes this phenomenal running back. And Royster had maybe 8 carries that season. So I'm not saying I know exactly what's going to happen, but let's look at it, take a step back, and realize that Alfred Morris is the guy. Roy Helu is the guy in the passing game. They like Roy Helu. They like Helu to be that change-of-pace back who probably could be started on about 8 teams in the NFL. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say Helu is a special talent.
Oh, yeah.
He had some injury issues early on, but he's best in that position of a 5 to 10 touch guy to mix it up in the offense. And then you have Darryl Young, who down at the goal line, remember last year around week 7, week 8, something like that, he had a 3-touchdown game. Young is one of those guys who vultures TDs or vultures big-time, plays where Morris and Helu don't come through. So now you're talking about a guy, Silas Redd, who really, in this case, broke out because the Redskins were up 30 points. And they didn't want to, overwork their other 3 guys. So I think Redd is one of those guys that the risk is to overreact and pick up a guy who may very well get 0 touches this week. Unless there's an injury to Helu or Alfred Morris, I would say the chance of Redd getting anything more than 5 fantasy points in a week this season is about 0.1%.
There we go. Hey, man, I'm just checking all my options out here, man. I don't know where to go, man. I don't know where to go here.
Hey,
who's signed? No, I need to know this stuff, man. So does the world, man. Who's got some red alarms going off this week, good or bad? Who do you have circled as these guys are just gonna go off, or stay away from this guy as much as possible?
Yeah, I would stay away from Donald Brown only because of how excited people are about Donald Brown when Ryan Matthews went down in San Diego. And not everyone, there are a lot of people who, I tend to overgeneralize and say everyone. A lot of people are excited about Donald Brown because they say, oh, good, he's going to take the place of Ryan Matthews. If you look at Donald Brown's history, he's not the ideal every down running back. If he gets 12 touches and gets 50 yards and no scores, I think that would be a great day for Donald Brown. And that's why I think there are better people out there. I would stay away from Antonio Gates in terms of just trading him. Trade him now. This is the guy left for dead in the fantasy world going into the season. And he's having a resurgence because of a huge, really nice week 1 and then a 3 TD game week 2. Let's face it, there's so many other guys in San Diego who didn't do much last week because Gates absorbed all that fantasy, juju, all that good fantasy feeling all went to Antonio Gates. Well, Keenan Allen got left out. Malcolm Floyd was shut out. Ladarius Green, the backup, the other tight end, the complimentary tight end, didn't get a thing. They've got guys out there who can do damage. You can't expect Gates to get it done every week. The reality is Gates is a guy you couldn't sell much higher than this week, so I'm very down on him. On the plus side, you look at Arian Foster and his backups, Jonathan Grimes and Alfred Blue. Foster has got 55 carries in the first 2 games of the season. He's already got hamstring problems. This is a guy who recent injury history shows he was a huge risk coming into the year. He's paid huge dividends for his fantasy owners. Anyone out there who doesn't pick up Alfred Blue and secondarily Jonathan Grimes, but principally Alfred Blue, is making a huge mistake because all it takes is Arian Foster to pull up lame in the third quarter, and everyone next week is going to be rushing to pick up Alfred Blue. So I'm telling folks, including you, J-Rock, get Alfred Blue if you've got room on your bench, because by week 5, he could be the starter in Houston.
Okay, I'm with you there. Now, let's just say happen to theoretically perhaps be clicking the button here to grab up Mr. Alfred Blue. I've got limited options here on the bench. I mean, do I trade him out for Devontae Freeman perhaps, or do I not hold out hope that Jordan Matthews is going to eventually catch some passes here in Philadelphia? Or give me some guidance here. What do you think, man?
I think Maurice Jones-Drew is expendable. It would be a long shot for Jones-Drew to have any significant impact on that team going forward. I might be wrong, but you can play the tape in Week 11 and we'll see. I'm very confident in Maurice Jones-Drew as a guy. And a lot of people out there probably have these guys on their roster. And you mentioned Jordan Matthews and Devontae Freeman, guys who, if they come through by Week 8, you look like a genius. If they don't come through, you're wondering by Week 8, why do I still have this guy on my team? I think 2 weeks into the season is too early to give up on guys like Freeman and Matthews, who I'm still really, really high on. Notice that last week Riley Cooper was shut out. I mean, it was the Darren Sproles show, and, Macklin had a decent game. McCoy did all right, but it was basically the Sproles show. I think Jordan Matthews is going to get more involved in that offense, and Riley Cooper is going to be tailing back. And Matthews, as a potential number 2 receiver, is going to be very valuable. But I would drop MJD. I would pick up Alfred Blue. The worst thing that happens is that Arian Foster stays healthy, but you don't lose anything because Arian Foster is not going to play 16 games this season, especially at that pace. Either they're going to have to scale him back and bring in someone else with a change of pace, like Ben Tate was supposed to be over the past few years, or Arian Foster is going to burn out by midseason. So Alfred Blue, I think, is one of the best pickups. He and Jerick McKinnon are 2 guys available in most leagues who are going to bust out, in all likelihood, at some point by midseason.
Man, that's a bold call to just release MJD in Week 2, man. I hear you though, man.
That's code for thank you, BJ. Good to have you on the show. We'll talk to you next week.
I hope so, man. I don't know. That's gonna be one of those. Let's talk about it again at the end of the season. You know what? Y'all heard it here. This is how the magic happens in fantasy football, man. You know what? I'm desperate. Desperate men do desperate things, and maybe they pay off. I'm going to cut MJD for Alfred Blue, and let's see how that turns out here later on in the season. No, I hear you, man. I don't know what I was thinking drafting Maurice Jones-Drew. Anyway, I was hoping that when I gave up on him in a few seasons past and other people had him and hurt me with him, I said, man, all right, man, maybe I'll be the guy who gets him one more. Yeah, well, anyways. So, I won't be the guy, apparently. So there it is. What else did question, a flex. Let me give you a list of a couple of guys here. Tell me who you would play. Jermaine Gresham, Danny Amendola, Justin Hunter, Malcolm Floyd. Pick one out of those guys.
I would go Justin Hunter. Hunter was doing a lot of damage in the preseason. I think Jake Locker's limitations has hindered what should have been a better start to this season for Kendall Wright and Hunter. But I think both those guys are worth holding on to and starting because I think it's only a matter of time before they get their yards. And given the guys you just mentioned, for example, Tremaine Gresham, Tyler Eifert, goes out for the year. Gresham didn't do anything when he was the only guy in Cincinnati. Now that he's back to being the only guy, I don't expect Gresham to suddenly become the 70-yard-a-game guy that people hoped he would be. So I think Hunter gives you the most opportunity for a touchdown, which, given those four options, you're not really looking to rack up yards. You're hoping to get someone who can score, and I think he's the best option for that.
See, I had Hunter and Gresham, but I was leaning towards Gresham just because he was going against the Titans defense, and the Titans were going against Cincinnati, who defensively, have been all right.
And you're right.
The first Cincinnati's
a terrific defense. They're not. I think they're sixth or seventh or eighth best defense. I don't put them among the elite, and I think a defense like that, they're not going to shut down Tennessee. I think they're going to keep Tennessee maybe to 15, 18 points. But if somebody's going to score, it's going to be Wright or Hunter, and that's why I like Hunter's odds. I think Delaney Walker has been fantastic, obviously, for the first 2 weeks at tight end in Tennessee. But again, the same thing with Antonio Gates. You're not going to see a defense not adjust to the fact that Delaney Walker is the primary target. They might overplay on that, and that's going to leave a little more room for a guy like Hunter to step up.
All right, and do you think with A.J. Green, and I don't know what his current injury status is right now, affect Gresham's fantasy value at all too? Because obviously you still got Sanu, but that's gonna make his value a little bit higher there offensively. You think too? That kind of doesn't that or no? Do you think that's not going to matter?
Yeah, I think it could matter, but I think I wouldn't want to overread that. I think Gresham is a guy who just, if you look at his numbers week by week, whether A.J. Green, has played, I think Green's played most of the times Gresham has played. I don't see Gresham as being a reliable option, especially when you've got a receiver like Hunter who should be getting more targets. A guy from who covers Cincinnati Bengals, Jeff Hobson, reported about an hour ago that A.J. Green was on the field practicing. So it looks like he's going to be a guy who will play, barring some kind of setback. But I wouldn't want to get too excited by a guy like Gresham. Same thing with Donald Brown. Anyone who doesn't have a track record for success should not be counted on to suddenly step up the way they never have before.
BJ Rudell, fantasy football for winners. It's always fun. Yeah, I hear the Beastie Boys in the background. I'm fighting for my season here, man. I'm telling you. I wish we had those NFL type statistics like, 12% of the teams that start 0-2 don't make the playoffs. Man, what percentage of fantasy teams in a 14-week season make the playoffs if they start 0-3? Because I'm hoping not to join that group of people, man. That seems like some awfully long odds to have to fight. 1-2 got to be better than 0-3. But problem is I'm facing the highest scoring team thus far through the first 2 weeks. Loaded. Got Delaney Walker. Aaron Rodgers. He's definitely he's got a lineup from top to bottom. So I'm telling you, I'm staring down the barrel of 0-3, man.
Well, be confident, be bold.
One player away from the turnaround, like you said, man, like you said. And seriously, it is a long season. I'm just sitting here looking at my bench again. I'm going, man, I got a whole bunch of guys that I'll look like a genius if these guys start playing some ball here in the next couple of weeks, man. So, let's see.
Can I say one more thing, J.R.?
Yeah, everything you got, lay it out there, man.
Yeah. Because, Beast Boys playing in the background, I didn't want to step on anything, but one thing that for the listeners to hear, and I know you know this, JR, is being proactive, being ahead of the curve is the key. A lot of people, I'm going to give you one player as an example. The big name this week is Mohamed Sanu. A lot of people are talking about Sanu. I'll bet he's taken in your league.
Absolutely.
So right before week 1, when Marvin Jones went out, was out for the first 4 weeks, and Sanu was going to step in and be the number 2. I've been following Sanu for a few years. I've mentioned it at least once on your show. And I told people on my blog, it's followed by about 1,100 people on Facebook, Fantasy Football for Winners. I said, start Sanu. Sanu is a guy that no one's talking about, but he's going to be an easy fantasy starter if you're in need of another receiver. So the first week, he didn't do much. He got about 5-7 fantasy points. last week he was about the 8th or 7th best receiver in all